Welcome to the U-Turn Podcast. This is the place to connect to who you truly are. We're bringing PhDs, experts, and leaders to help you elevate your mindset in your work life and in your love life so that you can see things differently and truly love your world. I'm Ashley Stahl. I'm a career expert, author, and TEDx speechwriter and booker, and I'm excited to bring you in to this week's episode. What's going on, U-Turn friends? I'm really excited to bring someone so seasoned, so full of content, so full of information and support for you. It's Kelly Roach. She is one of the only female founders in the online space to build her company from 0 to 8 figures, and she did this with no debt, no investors, no outside funding, and she's a former NFL cheerleader. We gotta love that. And a Fortune 500 executive turned 8-figure entrepreneur. And she's empowered so many people around the globe, thousands of them, to achieve financial and lifestyle freedom through entrepreneurship. She's an 11 times international bestselling author, a top 20 podcast host, and of course, gotta love that she is a philanthropist too. And she's been featured in all of the places, the ABCs, the Foxes, the Forbes. And she's number 287 for being a recipient on of a prestigious award on the Inc. 5000 list. Stevie Awards, Woman of the Year, Titan CEO of the Year, Inc.'s Best in Business. She just has so much going on in her beautiful brain that I can't wait to share with you. And we're going to talk about reinventing yourself, really building a business that supports you, and vision, amongst many other things. So Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I love when I meet, I have so many friends that are beautiful women in business. I'm an NFL cheerleader and I also built an 8-figure company. I love it so much. So, okay, take me back to when you didn't even know this was going to be your life. Who was Kelly before she built?
Well, I remember I was riding in my mom's wood-paneled, hand-me-down, massive station wagon one day. I was being picked up from high school, and my parents sacrificed everything to put us into Catholic school. We were on the free lunch line, had no money, and yet we went to Catholic school because we took that little bit of money that we had, and it was so important to my parents that we went to Catholic school that's where our money went. So, I got in the car one day and I was talking to my mom, and I was actually on the way from high school to my dance studio. And I cleaned my dance studio for 7 years after school and on the weekends to pay for my dance lessons. So, we pull up, we're in the huge station wagon, we're talking about something. And I was giving my mom this story of this audacious dream that I had about, what my life was going to be when I grew up. I don't remember what I said to her, but I do remember this, and it stuck with me every day for the rest of my life. And it was that I was telling her this thing, and she started laughing, big, bold laugh. And she said, "Kelly, you can have whatever you want as long as you're willing to work for it." And she was laughing, saying "Of course you can have that crazy dream. You just got to figure out how to make it happen." But that flipped a switch in me, and that stuck with me every day for the rest of my life. And it's how I am, where I am, because we can have anything that we want in life if we're willing to do the work for it. And so free lunch line, scrubbing the dance studio floors and mirrors and bathrooms every day after school for 7 years, ultimately ending up going to college at the university that I was going to be in the least amount of debt, working 5 jobs during college, went to a school that ended up having a D3 dance team and a horrible cheerleading team. And so I said, I'm not going to take a step backwards. So the only choice, of course, is to go audition for the NFL. Became an NFL cheerleader freshman year in college. And kind of the rest is history. I went to work for a Fortune 500 company, first one in, last one out, for 10 years, promoted 7 times in 8 years, ended up building a team of 100 people, and spent 10 years really learning business and falling in love with leading people and building teams and understanding how people see, how you can get people to see the greatness inside of themselves that maybe they don't even realize that they're capable of, and falling in love with coaching people and falling in love with business. And then one day I knew it was time to go out and do that for myself and to focus the energy of my vocation and my life on helping people make their dreams come true. And so that was in 2012. And, fast forward today, you shared some of the things that have happened with, my first business, but I now actually run a portfolio of 6 companies and I have executive leaders in 4 of those 6 companies. And they each have one purpose and one purpose only. And they all tie into the larger purpose, which is how do we help entrepreneurs grow? How do we change the statistic of 85% of businesses failing in the first 5 years? And how do we help people pursue their goals and dreams without sacrificing the things that actually matter the most in life? Your family, your faith, your fitness, your fulfillment, your, mental health, all of those things.
It's so powerful to kind of like hear that you just had, it seems like almost like a flow state with business. Like you fell in love with these parts of business. You said you were the first to show up, last to go. I feel like there's so many narratives out there about the first to show up, last to go person that's like burnt out and they hate it all. But it sounds like your ending was like, I loved it and knew it was time.
Yeah.
There's so much about business that I love so much, but I also feel like my little human soul and gets tired and struggles and has a hard time sometimes managing people. Like, what were some of the like secret sauces that you found to keep your energy in a good spot, that you were happy to show up early and go late, that you did have that grit and that resilience and that magic that it really does take to be diplomatic, with people who work for you and support you? Like, what are I feel like people have people problems all day long. Sure. Anything there. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think having a North Star for your life, right? I think I've always been playing in a game of decades, not a game of days or weeks. And I think that's always been my advantage with everything that I've done. I was an entry level, sales and recruiting rep in a huge international brand that was #1 in the world for what it did and traded on the stock market. And I was in like a nothing job. And my colleagues would say to me, why do you show up in a suit every day with your hair and makeup done? And I was like, because I ain't here for this job. I'm here for the job 5 levels up and I'm going to get it, right? And so I was thinking about what was going to happen over those next, 5, 8, 10 years. I wasn't thinking about what was going to happen that afternoon. And I think that it's really important for me to share that when I do podcasts and things like this, because we live in a world that glorifies instant gratification and that presents a picture of the speed of things happening. And it's very unrealistic. And it's very, very important for people like myself to share the journey, the struggle, the setbacks, the failures, the thinking in 10 years, not 2, because otherwise people think, well, I can just do this for a couple months and I'm going to start to see these kinds of results. And that's just not, not truth.
And right. I guess there's like something about hope. It's like sometimes, I see all these documentaries about like managing your money and people are not in touch with their future selves. It's like hard to be in touch with your 90-year-old, crinkly and self. It sounds like you're super in touch with your future self. Like she wants to be, and you're showing up today to create her. How do people even start to tune into that self,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to remember is that like we were given like free will, right? When we were born, we were given free will. That means as human beings, like, there is a will for our life. There was a plan, a path, and a destiny, but we were given the opportunity to choose in every moment, right? And as humans, we make over 3,000 choices every single day, right? And so for me, when I was growing up on the free lunch line and when I was always embarrassed because we didn't have money and when I was always feeling vulnerable and exposed because of a situation that I didn't create for myself, I had to get in touch with my future self. It was the only way I could live. It was the only way that I could not feel the pain of being in that present moment, was to tap into the possibility for the future and to recognize that my 3,000 decisions that I had to make each day was actually what was going to decide my future. And I think it's really easy, especially as a business owner. Like, we deal with so much crap all day long, every day. Like I say to people all the time, if you run a business by 8:30 in the morning, you get your first punch in the face. Like, and that is what we do. I run 6 companies. It's insane, right? And I love, with a passion, I love what I do. I would not change a single thing, but that's just the truth, because you're dealing with people and you're dealing with uncontrollables and you're dealing with hundreds of clients, right? So you have to get in touch with your future self. You have to believe that you have the power to be a co-creator in your life, of your life. And you have to be able to, even in a moment when you're having a great struggle, when you're feeling a lot of pain, when you're feeling exhausted, when you're waking up in the morning and you're like, I don't feel like I can do this today. You have to be able to vision cast for yourself. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Where is this going? And how does what I choose to do, to be, and to believe today in this moment affect what my results are going to be tomorrow, what my results are going to be 6 months from now, what my results are going to be a year from now? And if you look at people, most of their lives run in this circular pattern. And you see people in your life like this all the time, that it's like every time you talk to them, it's like the same thing. Nothing has changed. And that is because the average person is operating in the moment. They're not looking at how what they are saying, doing, being, acting, believing in this moment is co-creating for tomorrow and every day after. And so it's just remembering the power that we have. Like, that's it. And that is so much harder to do than it is for me to sit here and say. Because when you're dealing with the crap and when you're in it and you feel like you have a vault sitting on your shoulder, it's very difficult to train your brain and to train your mind and to train your body to be able to be like, okay, I have to deal with this thing that's in front of me right now. I have to move through this. I have to deal with it. This is reality. And I'm still going to stay focused, and I'm still going to keep my energetic emotion and attachment and focal point on where I'm going, not where I sit today. And it's just training your brain and training yourself to be able to do that, because I really do believe that we have this unbelievable artistic invitation to be creators in our lives and to customize our life experience based on what we believe and what we imagine. But it takes constant brain training. Like, I read almost a book a week, and I do that because it trains my brain and it helps me to remember the power that we were already given and just how to put that power into practice.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It is storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. But the problem is that AI needs a lot of speed. It needs a lot of processing power. So how do you compete with costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/yourturn. That's YOURTURN. I know this is a little bit different of a code, but it's your turn instead of U-turn. So YOURTURN. It's like, I'm so impressed by your, like, I want to say it's like life force energy, like, because I feel like I'm a dog with a bone. Like, give me something and I'm going, and nobody's going to stop me, right? Like, I wanted to be in national security. I was on the path to being right in the CIA, 23 years old, multiple. So I understand being an achiever. But there's sometimes where I guess I can't fully relate, where I want to be up-leveled by your energy. And for everybody listening, okay, so let me give you an example. Like, I'm building Wise Whisper Agency, like I was telling you, and those of you, she has a podcast you need to check out too. She just introduced me to her audience. It's called The Kelly Roach Show, so easy to remember.
Yeah.
But, I was talking to you on your show about how I was career coaching and referring all these clients to this booker, and then I put it under one roof. And so it's been under one roof at Wise Whisper Agency for a year.
Yeah.
And we signed like tens, 50 TED Talks in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, all right, I need the speech writing. I'm neurotic about excellence. And I never was this way, but I think it's because I identify as a writer, and because my identity as a writer, now it needs to be excellence. It's like a different standard from me.
Yeah.
I've always been a, progress over perfect person. I'm like, no, these speeches need to be excellent. So I think that's almost like finding the right talent, and then navigating their personalities. Like half of my speechwriters have different things with their mental health. And I think that comes with being a highly creative, talented person sometimes. And having to be diplomatic with them, right? Get things done. It's like I feel like in the business, there was a moment, and I'm stepping away from it because I have good talent now, where I was starting to get really burnt out and just like cynical, no matter how much I love the business. And I was so disappointed in myself. I'm like, I've only been building this for 8 months and I'm this burnt out. Like, come on, like you got a whole business to build. You don't have time for this.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, like, how do you prevent or work with those moments? Number one.
Yeah.
I know I have many thoughts here. And then the second half is, I was just talking to a business friend who's brilliant, who I should connect you to her. I'll have to mention her to you offline.
Yeah.
She just exited a beauty company, and she was just trying to be a helpful friend. She's like, well, why are you building this agency? It can probably do more than no more than like $3-4 million a year. Why don't you build something that can do $10 or $20 million a year? She's like, why are you giving these sacred years of your life to this business? And I'm like, well, I'm a writer and this is what I'm best at, and I'm like using it.
Right.
But obviously along the way, you stop feeling like everything is your purpose because you're kind of in the weeds or you're in different parts of the journey. So I would love to just get your feedback on those sticking points for everybody listening who have those moments like I'd had, where it's like, what am I even doing? Like, I thought I loved this. It's hard. All that.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I'll say is every single person that is in pursuit of excellence has those moments constantly. So I just want to validate you and say, like, I've had those moments. I think everyone who's achieved extraordinary levels of success has had those moments, because excellence and going the extra mile and achieving at very high levels is reserved for a certain type of person that is able to move forward in spite of those feelings. And the average person is not. The average person gives up and gives in to those feelings versus saying, no, I need to pattern interrupt myself and back on track. I will say a couple of things. I'll go back to what you asked about the idea of burnout. I feel that I have been able to maintain a really high level of energy and focus and drive. And I'm a hard driver. Like, I push hard, I move fast, I drive hard, for over a decade now. But I have been able to do that because I've always held certain things in tension. First thing being, my family is the most important thing in my life to me. Secondly, my faith. And thirdly, my fitness. And by fitness, it's mental fitness, it's physical fitness, it's getting 8 hours of sleep, it's drinking a ton of water, it's fueling my ability to perform at an optimal level. And, I think that we all need those reminders constantly that we're putting extraordinary levels of demand on our bodies. We're putting extraordinary levels of stress on our minds. We are asking our brains and our bodies to carry a lot, right? Especially in the business climate of today, especially in the world of today, especially the pace that we're trying to move at. And most people are driving a car that's been on empty for 3 years now, and they are still pushing the pedal down through the floorboard of the car and wondering why it's not driving well, right? And so the first thing is understanding that when I go back to what we started the conversation with, it's playing a long game, right? You want to build something that you don't want to rush to sell or to close or to get rid of. You want to build something that you love so much to run that you never want to sell, that you never want to close it, that you never want to shut it down. And ultimately, you will have to do one of those things, right? There's only 3 exit points. You're going to pass it on, you're going to close it, you're going to sell it. Right. But you want to build something that you love so much to lead that you're not driving towards that necessarily. You're just setting yourself up for that. And so I would say, number one, really knowing what is most important to you in your life and making that first, putting first things first, majoring in the major things. Right. Number 2 is like understanding the extraordinary demands that you're putting on your mind and on your body and fueling yourself and recognizing that your body is like a machine and it is up to you to make decisions every single day to allow it to perform optimally for you. I mean, I'll use you as an example, Ashley. Like for you're a great example because what you're doing, it is a very skilled craft. It requires a very high level of mental acuity, what you're doing. Yes. As with me, I'm a strategist. It requires a very high level of mental acuity. I can't be sloppy. You can't be sloppy. Like your whole craft is dependent on the ability for a quality output. And so for everyone listening, quality input, quality output. 8 hours to sleep, tons of water, fueling your body with nutrition, exercising, moving. Like these are just the basic essentials that we skip over every single day. And I know everyone's heard it 1,000 times from Sunday, but you need to hear it again. And then knowing when it's time for a reinvention, knowing when it's time to really disrupt yourself and to take things to the next level, or when something is not working. I see a lot of people that will do like a panic pivot, or they'll shut something down. I see the posts every day online. I burn it to the ground and this is what I did. And it's like, that's such a waste and it's so like not necessary. You can do a planned up level, a planned reinvention, a planned pivot. And in order to have a sustainable career over a period of decades, you will have many, many careers within your career. So even if you're Ashley, the business owner, and you're running this agency today, by the time you exit the agency, there will be like 6 or 7 careers within that career where you will reinvent. Even if ultimately you end up exiting the same business that you run today, it's going to look completely different by the time you get to that point where you're ready to do that. And so learning how to go through a reinvention process in a non-emotional but instead strategic way is a really important part of setting yourself up for the long game. And I think that, I started talking about this a lot about a year ago because I saw everyone doing like the panic pivots and the burn it to the ground and I want to shut down my business. And I saw so many businesses going out of business and I was like, you didn't need to do that. Like you just had to go through like a strategic reinvention where you evaluate where you are, where you're going, what it actually needs to look like to get there. It's exactly like you described, Ashley. When I took my first company, the business advisory, over 8 figures, and I sat down and I said, and I always work off of an org chart and I build all of my business plans around an org chart and I always do it based on a 10x. So when I was at 7 figures, I was like, what's my org chart to get to 8? When I got to 8 figures and I did my org chart to get to 9, I was like, nope. I don't want to run that business. I don't want to have that many team members. I don't want to have coaches coaching coaches of coaches. That ain't happening. And so for me, I knew I wanted to take my portfolio to 9 figures, but I knew I absolutely did not want to take the coaching company there. And that was when I started breaking out. Now I have the Conviction Marketing Agency, the Advanced Innovation Society, the Virtual Business School, lots of other things. I grew one core offer with one core launch to 8 figures. I focused on basically nothing else besides that one thing. But then when I got to that next level, I was like, okay, let me look at what this is going to look like. And it ended up being like a total reinvention for me because I realized that I wanted the business advisory really to be much more of a high-end boutique for the best of the best of the best elite business owners that wanted to build multi-7 and 8-figure businesses. I didn't want to water it down and make it be for everyone just so that I could pursue saying, oh, we kept growing year after year after year. Right. And so it's something very similar, it sounds like, that you're going through with the agency now where you're saying to yourself, well, what level do I want to take this to? And what does that look like? And what is the business model? And how many clients do we want to serve? And how many writers do we want to have? And what does that look like? Right? It doesn't mean that forevermore the agency in its form today won't be a part of what you do. It just means that as you progress, it might be a piece of the puzzle, not the puzzle itself, which is exactly what happened to me with the business advisory. I was like, I'm not willing to compromise on the excellence of what we do. I believe we're the best in the world at helping businesses grow to 7 and 8 figures. I don't want to have 8,000 clients that we then have to water down our product and we have to make it for everyone. And now we're not going to be able to help people do the very thing that we're the best at doing because we have to make it work for the average person instead of the extraordinary one.
I love what you're sharing so much because I feel like just the way you shared your thinking and helping people see what you're doing right now might be a part of the vision of what you're doing later. But even letting people realize that that is available. And it sounds like but we forget, like, I have an agency right now that's focused on TEDx. I think we're the best at it. Right?
Yeah.
Many ways you just pointed out that it could change, right? One way is you could get more clients, right? And you talked about how you didn't really know if that was kind of the way you wanted to do it. The other way to change is to change your prices, make them higher, and change your ideal customer, figure out who they're going to be. And I'm imagining there's a third way that I'm forgetting right now. It's get more clients,
customers, raise the price, bundle services.
Make your customer worth more for the business, right? So upsell things to the customer that they love that you can be an integrity offering. Okay, so kind of going back to that sticking point, because I think a lot of people, your energy is so expanded, and I feel really lucky. I have a lot of friends like that, and it's a beautiful thing to have. That. And they hold me very accountable. It's like, and I think everybody listening, we've all had those moments where we're totally stuck at thinking that something is one way, and it feels so claustrophobic to feel that.
Yeah.
And then you just realize, wait a minute, if you feel that claustrophobia, you're just stuck in somebody else's frame. And you can get out. You can think different. This doesn't have to be your frame.
Yes.
And that's the best thing about it. Okay, so you were kind of in those sweet spots you were talking about where you looked at your org chart and you were like, well, this isn't actually what I want to run, so I'm going to change it this way. But I know that in between there's those sticking points of like, oh shit, this is where it's going, but now I don't want it. So I got the sense that you have a pretty good reinvention process. Or like, tell me a little bit.
Well, actually, and what I would love to do, if it's okay with you, Ashley, I wrote a 38-page guide on how to do a business reinvention. And I would love to include that for your listeners if you can put that in the show notes.
I would love
totally free. And it literally walks you through, it first takes you through an assessment of asking you all of these discovery questions, which will help you tell you. You will then define, like, well, what is it that you want to change? What, why, how, what does it look like? Then I walk you through all different ways. So 6 different types of business models, 10 different ways to go to 10 million. I show you all these different frameworks of like, by the way, you can blow up the box that you're in, not by destroying what you've already built, but enhancing it by adding on new and different ways that you can up-level, that you can pivot, that you can realign. So I think it's 1 about getting clear. It's 2 about understanding really the endless options and possibilities that you have, but getting clear on what some of the proven pathways are to get to where you want to go. And then 3, defining a methodology for then going from, okay, this is where I am to this is where I want to be. And I think the thing that is important is, we talked a little bit on my show. You mentioned the one thing, which I love the one thing. I've read it multiple times. And, the thing that allowed me to take my business very efficiently and effectively to 8 figures was focusing on my one thing. And people see what I'm doing today and they're like, you're running all these different companies and you're doing all these things. But that was only after I achieved that level of success. And I was like, I am not going to go on this same path to get to where I'm going next because it's not actually what I want to build. So I think that's important. But I think that when you do this, it's also understanding that there's a slow down to speed up process, Ashley. And this is where people make huge mistakes. And this is where I feel like people really fall off a cliff. Because when you decide to take what you're building and then to kind of, let's just use the example I hear every single day from people, whether it's about pricing or whether it's up-leveling their avatar, their ideal client. I want to charge more. I want to work with better clients. I'm like, great, I can show you how. And then 3 weeks in, they're like, it's not working. people won't pay my price. I don't have these people in my audience. And it's like, hold on a second. You have to build an audience of those people at that level that have that, level of disposable income. You need to nurture those people. You need to build relationships with those people. And so there's this whole like patience game. When I split out my other companies, I could have very well just put my foot down on the gas and kept going with exactly what I was doing. Instead, I probably slowed myself down by about 5 years because I decided I did not want to continue on that path. I was going to go build these new brands that were in their infancy, and I was going to build brands that didn't use my face, that didn't use my name, that didn't use my email list, because I want self-led companies. I want to run a portfolio of self-led companies. So it's a whole lot harder to say, I'm not going to leverage my face, my name, my brand, all of these things. I slowed myself down probably by about 5 years to do that. But why was I willing to do that? Because I know where I want to be 5 years from now. And I put myself now on that path to have these autonomous self-led companies that don't rely on me in order to function, in order to market, or in order to grow.
I love that so much. And I feel like the speeding, isn't that a book? I think it's like Slowing Down to Speed Up is the name of a book I read when I got my graduate degree in psychology. And I remember thinking like, it's just so hard to stop yourself and to really believe that the stop is what is gonna really help you reinvent.
It's so hard. It's the hardest thing, because when you do that, there's so much fear and there's so much overwhelm, and you almost feel like panicked because you're like, is everything just going to fall apart while I'm trying to like do this reposition? And then you're kind of like walking a tightrope, right? Because you have to keep the old thing going to maintain profitability and to maintain a client success rate and to ensure that, I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And you need to kind of be building this other thing over here, but it's so worth it. And I think that a lot of people get too impatient and they'll do like a sudden like flip of a switch overnight, and it just destroys your brand credibility. It's like people are like, what are you doing? Like, I would never buy from someone that did that. Like never. If I saw someone for 3-4 years doing something that overnight was like, oh, by the way, now I do such and such, which I see this every day of the week. I would never buy from that person, because to me, it demonstrates instability. It demonstrates this is an immature person that made a decision overnight, that didn't have the foresight to plan, to prepare, and to communicate about what they were doing. It doesn't feel good as a consumer. And so I think just being aware of that, and just being patient. Like playing a long game, That's
such a powerful thing. I remember my first therapist I ever got, he said to me, you are in your most powerful state when you are calm. As I get older, I'm like, I'm not calm. I'm not powerful. I need to get back to calm. Okay, there's one spot, though, that I still keep thinking about, Kelly, and it's that sticking spot where you need more, and this is going to lead me, and everybody who's listening is going to get so excited about lead generation because everybody wants more clients. And I want to ask you about that. But there's that sticking spot for so many entrepreneurs, and I was there a few months back with Wise Whisper, and I'm not there anymore because we just closed out our first year, right? Like I was just referring a ton of business to somebody before this. So that sticking spot of our revenue is good, but it's not stable yet. Right? People are building a business and their money's not stable yet, but I've got 100 hours a week worth of stuff to do. So I need to hire talent, but I need to afford the talent. And then they're in this like chicken or egg of like, I need to hire help, but I need to afford the help. So I need to work harder to keep affording the help. Like, what is your message for people in that sticking spot? Because I imagine that's just inevitable for a moment in time.
Oh, absolutely. It's what every business goes through. And the only way through that spot is you have to, the time that you're taking back, you have to spend doing sales and marketing, period. There is no way around it unless you're willing to go into debt. I am not. The only way around it is the time that you take back by hiring talent to grow the business. You have to spend selling harder, marketing harder, connecting with more people, being more visible. That is the only safe passage, right? That is not going to put you in a financially compromised position. And I see a lot of people that they hire, they expect the person to be generating huge profits overnight. Then they're frustrated. Then they say the person isn't performing, and then they fire the person. And it's this constant circular, thing of, well, I hired this person and they didn't produce. And it's like, did you hire the person and they didn't produce, or did you hire the person and you didn't produce? Right? And so these are those leadership lessons, right? It's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow as a CEO. But, ultimately, as a founder, the CEO, the president, and until you have executive leadership that is running your business for you and you're no longer involved in the day-to-day, you're the ultimate salesperson. And I have sales teams in my companies. I have people besides me. I'm not the primary salesperson in any of my companies, but you better believe I still contribute to the sales. You better believe I still have, huge accountability and investment in that process to ensure that we just brought on, new talent in 3 of my companies. And so everyone has to put their oar in the water,
This is so good. Okay. So it's interesting. I feel like a lot of people probably listen to entrepreneurs like you, Kelly, and on one hand, they're, got to be inspired and say like, wow, because you speak with command, authority, ownership over what you've created because you created it. You know what I mean? Here it is. It's funny. I had my e-learning platform for years. We had funnels set up. We had courses on how to get a job, how to figure out which job, and we still have them hiding, but the funnels were so dialed in, my team was dialed in, and I totally forgot what it was like to be in a startup. You know what I mean? Like, for lack of a better phrase, I feel like I was like at the country club out to lunch, just live in my world. Totally forgot when I was like eating shit sandwiches 10 years prior to that. I just forgot. So I like that I'm building this agency now, and it puts me back in touch with so many people, and I appreciate that. It's hard. I know most people are not maybe like lead generators quite like, somebody who's a very seasoned business owner. So what I find really empowering is to help everybody listening with wisdom from business owners like you on where do you feel like your lead gen has been the most surprising, magical, nourishing, worth your time? Like, obviously we diversify our lead gen, right? Like, I just read a book called Endless Referrals by Bob Burg, and I thought that was really fun. And I do many things for lead gen. We could see word of mouth, paid ads, SEO, whatever. I'm just curious for people listening where you feel a lot of energy and aliveness for your lead generation.
Yeah. I mean, we use 14 different methods across my 6 companies for lead generation and sales on an ongoing basis. Not all at all times in all companies, but we have 14 core strategies that we use. Our top 2 are the live launch method and our $1 million referral system. Like, those are our top 2. We do a ton of organic lead gen, a ton. So we both run ads, and we're always running ads to build our email list, to generate leads for launch. We're doing live launches, that kind of thing. My agency doesn't launch, obviously, but a lot of my other businesses do launches. So we do a ton with Facebook ads. We run Instagram ads. We do a lot of organic lead gen using just videos and stories and posts and engagement. Facebook groups, huge. I see posts every day like, our Facebook group's dead. They're totally not dead. They are still so good. But only if you manage them responsibly. I see people that build a Facebook group, they'll use it for a purpose one time, and then they just let the group grow dead, and they don't do anything with it, and then they wonder why it's not a meaningful sales tool. If you keep the group alive and you keep people engaged and you're active there, people will stay active there, and then it will be an ongoing sales tool for you. So live launch number 1, referral generation, organic lead gen, and just content, like great content. It's great. I wrote a book on it, Conviction Marketing. It's literally, the whole book is about the fact that I don't know what your style is, Ashley. I do not like the trends and fads and, all that stuff online. And everybody, more power to you, whatever your, preference is. I don't like that stuff. I'm not willing to do it. I don't want to do it. So I wrote the book because I got really pissed because I saw so many entrepreneurs when all these trends were coming out of like the dancing and the pointing videos and like all that nonsense before COVID. And I was like, you don't have to do that. You can still make millions of dollars. So I was like, I am going to write a book and give people a method that they can follow for creating timeless, high-value content that converts, that allows entrepreneurs to not have to chase the trends and not have to participate in the fads and not have to do things like pointing and dancing on camera to get people's attention, but instead can really be focused on delivering value and engaging people by really stepping into creating authority, value, meaningful transformation, and an invitation. And so organic content has been a huge thing for us as well. Our email list, like all the basics, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Another thing that was coming up for me listening to you was just like, you talked about a lot of companies that are self-led. So let's say somebody listening right now, they're on the ground floor, maybe they have an assistant, they're working on their vision and they want it to be self-led. You touched on this idea that a lot of people have, which is that what they do is not replaceable, that they have a unique skill set, right? Like you talked about you being a strategist, like you're the brain.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody, like it's always been kind of a sad thing until recently with my speechwriters where they're, I think they're better writers than I am. And I take a lot of pride in my writing, but they need a creative director. They can't write a talk without somebody steering the ship. The client is just sitting there, the speechwriter is just sitting there unless there's a driver. And it's been kind of sad for me sometimes when they're like, wow, I can't believe what you just did there. And I'm like, no, don't tell me that, because nobody can ever do it. And it's all me all alone forever. And so I think a lot of people, and granted, I found a creative director that I'm really impressed and inspired by. So I guess that's a kind of a two-part question is like, what is your message for the person that thinks that they are the business and there is no way out? And number two, how do they find those unicorns that exist?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, every service provider feels that at one point in their journey. And the pain of not being able to shut down has to become great enough that you're willing to change your belief, right? You have to be willing to change your belief in order to open up the doors of possibility that you can in fact bring people onto your team to do what you do and to help get replicable results for your clients. And I felt that exact same way in the early stages when my company that is called The Business Advisory was once called Kelly Roach Coaching. I was the talent. I was the coach. I was coaching everyone. There was no coach besides me. And, in my growth and in the transformation of building out the company, it became the Business Advisory because it is a team of very skilled business strategists and advisors with unique and diverse background and talent that can help my clients, in fact, get 7- and 8-figure results, right? Yeah. And so what I would say is, number one, it's a belief set. Like it's your belief. And then number two is you have to realize that you're not necessarily going to find someone who's going to walk through your door and be able to do that. It's going to come from a very intense process of coaching and training and what I call talent and time. It's talent and tenure. And it is you finding a talented person that you can cultivate and expand and enhance and grow. And then it's them having time with you inside the brand to develop their skill set and their ability to execute on your behalf in the way that you would have. And it is possible for all of us, but you first have to believe it. You second have to always be recruiting and looking for great talent. And thirdly, have to develop a really good system and build tenure within your organization so that you can take someone who is already talented in their own right, but help them really expand and grow into their ability to operate and execute on your behalf and produce similar results.
Okay, so that tipping point of going from Kelly Roach Coaching to like the Business Advisory.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest changes you had to make? Obviously, it's hiring the person that is overseeing it. Like, take me into like early org chart changes and like outside changes.
So I would say a couple of the biggest things were, number one, bringing in leadership, and number two, developing a very intense, like I'm talking probably 120 hours of a training curriculum for our strategists so that they could learn not just the methodology, but how to coach clients through the methodology and how to use the methodology with clients and how to answer things in alignment with our brand, our values, our verbiage, our positioning, all of those things. So I think establishing and putting together your training process is as beneficial for you as it is for your employees, because it's you actually having to crystallize and define your own process. I hear this from creatives all the time. My right-hand person, Danielle Ceballos, she runs 3 of my companies. She's the president of 3 of my companies, and she has leaders that report to her in those businesses. And she's always like, oh, it's all in my head. It's all in my head. I'm like, nope. I'm like, you got to get it out of your head. You have to get it out of your head. It needs to first go on paper, and then you need to record it in trainings. And then after people go through the trainings, you need to coach them on it, and you need to observe their work, and you need to give feedback. It's an extensive process. So a lot of people just aren't willing to do that.
Yeah.
There's not. They say they want the outcome of a self-led business, but it's just as heavy of a lift to go through that process with your people as it is to do it yourself. And then people are like, oh, well, then I might as well just do it yourself. Again, short-term thinking. If you're thinking short-term, yes, it is an equal amount of work. But if you're thinking long-term, like, oh my gosh, I get my life back. I have freedom. Like for me, I take a sabbatical every August. I have a 10-year-old daughter. I take the month of August off. I have leaders that run all of my companies. I don't take a single call. Like, and so I stay in touch just with my direct reports, you know, and, you know, if there's anything that they need or we need a consultant or whatever the case. But to get to that point, it is a huge lift that you have to have a vision of what are you building? What are you creating? Are you building a jail cell around yourself where you're the only person that holds the keys of the kingdom, so everyone needs you all the time? And so now you're creating this self-fulfilling prophecy of like, you can never shut off. You can never take time off. You can never, you know, step away. Or are you building this army of problem solvers and autonomous leaders that can, in fact, make decisions and act with authority outside of you?
So powerful. I feel like you're really just kind of going back to the thing, which is that like it's the cost of admission. It's like
it's the cost of admission.
Yeah,
that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah, it's like you want to play this game and you can win, and it's gonna feel good. You speak a lot in the future self, you know, just like of where you've gotten, where you can go, what you want, and there is something so compelling about letting yourself being pulled into that self. Yeah. I know, though, that along the way, people lose track of their future self. They're just like, fuck this self that I am right now. Yeah. I don't want this self.
Yeah.
And they forget that they can have that future self. Like, and I could kind of see the impasse of that. Like, I can see for myself, like, my team is really inspired and they love what they're doing. And they just like keep wanting more work through my agency. And they keep saying, like, this is the best kind of work. Like, TED Talks are like the highest form of people's storytelling, and it's like the deepest storytelling. But you know, there's moments where I just think to myself, like, wow, how do people keep talent when they don't have the kind of work that really excites, you know, like a TED Talk? Like, I feel like I've attracted some of the best writers I know because it's kind of the highest form of writing for them. In my very biased opinion. So what are some ways to get the right talent, or what are some screening questions to make sure you're not missing the mark there?
Well, I mean, let me back up before I get even to the screening questions. Like, you have to know what the heart and soul of your business is, right? If you're not actively casting vision with your employees constantly about the mission of your work and the vision of what you're trying to do in the world, I don't care how great it is that you think that what you do matters, people are not going to stay inspired and they're not going to ultimately want to stay, right? So you need to know, like, what is the heart and soul of not what you do, but the why behind it, right? And that has to be something that is a constant dialogue internally, a constant dialogue with your staff to bring out the best in people. Because even an A player that's brought into a crusty, boring workplace with people that are uninspired can spit out uninspired work, you know? And so you have to think about how you're cultivating an environment of excellence. I think the other side of that, from a screening standpoint, you know, having a process, like following a process. You know, we have people do the application and they submit a video. You can tell so much from the video, like so much. I mean, that is worth its weight in gold right there. And then they go through a multi-step interview process. Checking references is huge. And then being able to get feedback from other people on the team, because people show up very differently when they interview with you than they do with interviewing with people on the team. And different people on the team are going to pick up on different things with people, each of which are very, very important. So having multiple people interview helps a ton. And then using behaviorally event interview questions so that you're using what this person's past way of dealing with situations, their past way of interacting with the world and their perception of things to really guide and gear what you're going to expect in the future.
One thing that I've really struggled with is the reality that a lot of people are not in a good space with their mental health. And it's really hard to manage people that are struggling to be here. It's a hard world that we live in. I had a hire for 3 months who was a very expensive investment for my business. But she was very emotional. And I feel like that's feels like a very touchy thing for me to even say on my own podcast. But it's true. It was really hard to get through meetings without, if you're going to manage a lot of people, you're going to be receiving a lot of emotions. And if the person in charge of managing everybody is feeling a lot of emotions about everybody's emotions, it's really hard to run a ship. So how do you use any personality assessments? Because what I've learned is that sometimes I index too much for competence. Like, can you do the thing? That I don't index enough for culture. Like, is your vibe going to be helpful for everybody?
1,000%. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of assessments you can use. I don't use assessments. We did use them in Fortune 500, and I feel like they were really overused in a unhelpful way. But there are a lot of good assessments out there. I'm probably not the person to speak them. Here's what I will say. Every person on the team's energy impacts the productivity of the company at every moment in time. And so you cannot afford to have people on the team that are pulling the energy down of the collective. And so one of the things, actually, it's interesting that you asked that question. I literally just recorded a podcast episode on this to release in the next couple of weeks. Lessons learned from failed hires. One of the things that I talked about is why references are so important, and also asking someone their reason for leaving past jobs. And I found that when someone answers that their reason for leaving a past job has something to do with how they felt about their relationship with the company, how they felt about their relationship with the manager, it ends up that usually that person actually is dealing with emotional issues. And what I found back to back is that the same people that said they left for an emotional reason ended up not working out for an emotional reason. They're not able to function in a professional work environment because to them, they're assigning meaning to every single thing in an unhelpful way that then brings the collective down. I think it's just, you have to slow down to speed up. You have to really take time and, like I say, interview people on camera and watch their micro expressions and look at their, the way that they are presenting and how they're looking at the camera and how they're interacting. You can tell so much about a person. But even just asking questions that allow you to see like how they see the world, right? Because you can tell someone that lives above the line versus someone that lives below the line. You can tell someone that's had to overcome things in their life, or people that are quitters. I know right away when someone's 2 years on a resume, they're a quitter. They're not going to be in your organization long term because they can't commit. When challenges come, they're out. And so it's just learning these kind of rules of the road as you go. And you always want to make an excuse for them. You're always like, oh, but not in our company. But that's not going to happen here because of A, B, C, X, Y, Z. And then lo and behold, 3 weeks later, a month later, 90 days later, that same thing is happening in your company because they brought that pattern with them because that pattern goes everywhere that they go.
That's so powerful. And I feel like so true. And when I think about the person with the, like where it just felt like a lot of emotion. And it wasn't ever anger towards me. It was just things stressed her out and she would vent and the meetings turned into her venting. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And when that happens, it lowers the functionality of the entire operation.
Yeah.
When people can't find a way to process their emotions in a healthy way, whether it's one-on-one with their manager or outside of work, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I guess kind of final question around that. Now you got me thinking about this person that worked with us. Because I remember she told me she left because she said something about her last hire was toxic, or her last job was emotionally.
Yep. Every single time.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize that until I went back to debrief a couple people that hadn't worked out. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's the exact same thing. And that behavioral pattern goes where they go. So of course that's the reason, right? Or of course that's the reason why we had to let them go.
Yeah. Okay, that's my final question is actually, I feel like, going to hit on so many people. And it's that you talked about your why, and we hear that, right? Like you, a lot of entrepreneurs talk about that. And by the way, I'm noticing myself, you talked about earlier, ADHD kicking in. You talked about how you like looked for the job that you wanted and not the job that you had. It's like I'm in startup mode, so my hair is like fuzzy and my glasses are on and I look frenetic every day for the past like year. Thank you so much, Kelly. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people think about their why, like you talked about. And the reality is that there's a lot of people whose why is that they want to make a shitload of money. And that's, and I know there's more beneath that, right? Like, what do you want the money to do for you? I want to be a mother. I want to have freedom. I want to go to a cooking class on a Wednesday at noon. I don't know. What would be your message? Because I have a few girlfriends I was just in a mastermind with, and one of them said, I grew up poor, and my why is I want to have a ton of money. I never want to feel like that again. And that's it. And there's a lot of psychology around that we could get into, but I liked that it was just that simple for her. So what would be your feedback on somebody who communicates in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different for everyone, right? I mean, I don't think we can put a judgment on anyone's why. I think that for a lot of people, that will be their why until that need is met. And then once that need is met, they're going to need a new why. Because once you get to a certain income bracket, the more income you make doesn't actually have a significant impact on your quality of life or your life experience. And I think for a lot of people, that's their initial goal because of where they came from. And I think that's totally fine. And I think that's just something that has to evolve with you. What I would say where it gets unhealthy is when it's a success at all costs pursuit, because when your only goal is making money, that can allow you to round the edges on a lot of other things that are really important, which then ultimately backfires because, yes, you might get the money, but you might lose a lot of other things in the process that really matter to you. And that's why I think that the why being a little bit deeper is very helpful. Because I know for me, like coming from that situation financially, that the financial side of things was really, really important to me as well. But I also had really, really clear anchors around family and around faith and around functionality of my overall life that I made sure not to cross lines around. And that's why I feel like things kind of came together the way that they did. So it's holding things in balance. And knowing that you will get there financially. And then you're going to need a brand new why, because you're going to get to the law of diminishing returns where even making the next million, it has zero impact, on your day-to-day life, right? It doesn't really impact how you feel, what you experience. You're going to be craving something new and something more. But I think a lot of people start there and then it evolves as you grow.
Kelly, where can everybody start with you? I know you have all the books written, all the offers, all the companies in the portfolio, and I feel like everybody's going to want more of you from this.
Oh, you're so awesome. Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, I would say definitely check out the Kelly Roach Show. That's where I'm hanging out every single week. I'm always pumping out new episodes. Every single one is super value add. There's no commercials on the show. It is 100% value. So Kelly Roach Show. And then if we can link the Business Reinvention Playbook down below, I think that will add a ton of value for everyone to evaluate where they are, where they're going, what they want, how they can get there. I give tons of ideas and strategy and examples. And I think that will really help reignite that fire and help everyone listening get clear and focused with an action plan on getting to where they want to be.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. This was so refreshing, and I see why you're making such a huge impact.
Thank you so much. I was so happy to have this conversation today. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the U-Turn podcast. I hope you learned so much in this episode and you're putting it into action today. We would love to hear from you. Slide into my DMs at Ashley Stahl or leave a written review if you're inspired. It would mean so much to us. Be sure to subscribe to the show because, as you know, the more subscribers we get, the better the guests we can bring you. And in the meantime, if you're looking to skyrocket your personal brand and impact millions, head on over to wisewhisperagency.com to learn more about how we are getting clients booked for the TEDx stage.